Hey guys, I'm making a video while I still can towards the end of the summer. Sorry if my voice is a little off. I've been trying to get over a cold lately. I'm trying to make a video here towards the end of the summer because I'll probably be pretty busy also during the fall. But we'll see what we can do. I'll see if I can still get a few videos out then also. Okay, so this is going to be a video about my magic finding lightning sorc. This would be a bit easier to gear, as you guys might suspect, if I had a griffin, but I don't yet. So we'll see what we can do. I have Pluggy here, so as a lot of you guys probably know, which is why I can have these windows to show off the different specs. But this character gets 350% MF, and the damage actually looks pretty low, but the weapon I'm using is Crescent Moon. Like in the rune finding video, I managed to make this work with a Crescent Moon and stack a fair bit of MF. So I usually put this character on players 3, and she can handle it pretty well for the most part. You're gonna get a occasional archer pack that's gonna give you a little bit of problems especially if you put it up to players 5 or 7. But usually it works really quite well on players 3. If you get an archer that's like a huge problem for you, then you're just going to save time just by skipping it, as with any other character. If you're on a Blizzard Sorc and you come across some monster that's like physical and cold immune, and the physical immune would be a problem so your Merc can't kill it so easily, then you would just skip it. It's the same idea with this character and really tough lightning immunes. Very rarely do I skip a monster, but every so often it's worth it too. So now that we got the little introduction out of the way, the order I'm going to be going through this, I'm going to be going over the Merc Gear, the character gear, the skills, and then we're going to do a little test run. Where I like to run this character is in the pits, but it also works quite well in Chaos. Honestly, it works better in Chaos in the pits than anything, like in the sense that the actual runs go a little smoother in Chaos because the lightning immunes aren't so tough. In Chaos, in the pits, the lightning immunes are extremely tough. Those are the archers, but in Chaos, they're just the ghosts, so it's a lot easier generally in Chaos on this character. Okay, so the Merc Gear, we're looking at an Infinity here, E-Thresher. There's not really anything else you would put here. If you want to use like a budget Light Sorc and try to get some MF on it, I wouldn't recommend doing this because a Blizzard Sorc is just going to be better if you don't have that much in terms of gear. But if you really want to do like a budget Light Sorc with some MF on it, you'd be running Insight, really, if anything. I mean, possibly Obedience. It would just make so much more sense to use Insight if you're trying to do this budget. But I really would not recommend making a lightning sorc really at all unless you have infinity, because there's really not that much you can do without an infinity in the game, really. I mean, I guess the main things I could think of are like Pindle and cows, but that's really about it. I mean, maybe Mephisto, possibly, but I just would not recommend making a light sorc with lower tier equipment. Okay, so the Helm, I'm running Ralled Andes, and that goes nicely with the Fortitude. Now, since you do get some lifesteal from the Andes, and you get, what was it? You get IAS. I'm trying to think about this. I mean, you could, since, even though this has a Ral rune in it, I mean, if you want to do this with like an IAS jewel in there, and then you need the Merc to make up for his res, you could put a Chains of Honor on him. He's just not really going to do as much damage. He's going to steal a lot of life, which is nice. But the Andes, lifesteal, attack speed, strength allows him to wear the Sacred Armor. It's just really good, and Ethereal just gives a lot of defense, obviously. So that's a really good option. You could also use a Vamp Gaze here with a Fortitude. It just can't really be a Sacred Armor if you have a Vamp Gaze on your Merc. I wouldn't really recommend anything other than a Fortitude here, other than possibly a Treachery. But if you're running a Treachery, I mean, I don't know. I would just use a Fortitude, because you want your Merc to do a lot of damage to help you out with those archers a bit. as much as he can. So main things I would do here are either Andy's Fortitude or Vampgay's Fortitude. That's really the only things I would do. And this should be Infinity, regardless of whatever else is happening on your Merc Gear and Character Gear. So now into the Character Gear, like I mentioned, it's 350 MF. As you can see, I hit the 117 FCR breakpoint. Get a little bit of gold fund, given that we have the Geeds, and I'm using Chanseys at the moment, so that's kind of nice. It looks like the damage is kind of low, but you'll see it's kind of not, because I'm using a Crescent Moon. The main other option you would have here, especially if you have a Griffin's Eye, is a Heart of the Oak. Really, you could put an Ashudas on here if you have a like a Griffin's. And the reason why I say, I mean, if you don't have a Griffin's, I really recommend using a Crescent Moon. The reason I would say that, you either want Griffin's, Crescent Moon, or both, is because you want minus light res, like a fair bit of it, for dealing with archers. If you have a Griffin's, you probably want a light facet in it. I don't think there's anything else you'd want in there. You could put a Topaz. I wouldn't do that. You could. If you get like a max rolled Griffins, then maybe Topaz is okay, but I really recommend putting a facet. Maybe unless you're using Griffins and Crescent Moon. Kind of depends on what you're going for, like how much MF you already have, if it's really worthwhile even considering putting a Topaz and a Griffins for this build. But if you don't have a Griffins, then there's two things you could do. I would either use a Shaco, which is probably what I would recommend in pretty much any case you don't have a Griffins, because it's just, you know, 2 all skills is a lot of damage. The life and mana is really nice, tanking the archers a little bit from that life. Damage reduction, again, tanking archers. Lots of MF is really good. The only other thing I would put here if you don't have a Griffins is a Circlet with either 2 to Sorc skills or 3 to Lightning skills, or even 2 to Lightning skills, and 20 FCR. And if it's a Magic Circlet, ideally you would have taken it to Larzik and gotten 2 sockets in it, and either put facets in it, which I wouldn't do, unless you're planning on not ever making a Javazon. So facets if you don't want to make a Javazon, and otherwise Topazes. But we're talking about a Circlet with, I mean, what it might well be is just 2 Sorcerer skills. Probably the most common version of this is 2 Sorcerer skills, 20 faster cast rate, and it would have 48 MF from the Topazes. Okay. The armor in this setup, I'm using a Viper Mage because I need the FCR, since I'm using Crescent Moon and Shaco. That really puts me into a hold on FCR, although I do get out a little bit. I can get away with using Chance Guards by using 2 FCR rings, given that I have Arachnid Mesh. You want Arachnid Mesh on this character. Like, it's really just indisputably the best belt option for this character. I mean, like, possibly if you have a belt, if you just so happen to have a caster belt with 10 FCR, 24 faster hit recovery, what would it be, like 40 fire res, 40 lightning res, and 25 magic find, if that's even possible, then yeah, maybe use that over the Arax, and you would just have to make up some of that FCR if it applies. If you need the FCR in that case. But you probably would if you're using a Crescent Moon and a Shaco. The amulet, okay, so this is kind of why I get away with using Chance Guards, Crescent Moon, and Hoda, and Shaco rather, because if you're using these 3, you actually need to use Arachnid Mesh, Viper Magi, and Spirit, like a decently rolled Spirit. Like, what you really want here, I know Dobrunsky, I'm kind of jealous of him. I had recently watched one of his Light Sorc videos, and he had an amulet with 2 Sorc skills, 17 FCR, and I think it was 30 fire res. If you have an amulet like that, then more power to you. Use that thing. That is freaking awesome if you have an amulet like that. This is, like, decent enough. Basically, what I'm getting out of this, what I want out of this, is 2 Sorc skills and 12 FCR with my current setup, because I have a 35 Spirit. Okay, if you have I mean, really, it just needs to have 12 FCR, and that's basically it. But if you have a griffons, that would kind of change things a little bit. It would only need to have 7 if you're using everything I'm using except a griffons instead of a Shaco. Okay, so kind of the idea with the Lite Sorc is that there's certain sets of gear, like certain groups of gear that fit together. Okay, so like I'm using Chance Guards, Crescent Moon, Shaco, which makes it so I need a lot of FCR for my other stuff, which makes it so I have to use a Viper Magi. If I had a Griffins, then I could use a Train Gloves, and then I could use Scalder's Ire. Okay, so also if I used a Train Glove with if I just switched out my my Chance Guards, Van Braces, because they're double upped, and feel free to double up your Chance Guards, but I'd only do it if they're perfect rolled. I mean, not completely perfect, but 40 MF. So if I switch this with a Train Gloves, I could use 2 SoJs. For boots, you want War Travs and nothing else, period. Like, War Travs just have way more MF than any rare boots in the game. Maybe other than some sort of legacy rare boots, although I don't know. I mean, maybe like really old rare boots from a previous patch could roll up to 35 MF. I'm actually not sure on that. But yeah, you want War Traps, for the most part at least. You could, and this is kind of what I have. I was lucky enough to get this. You could use something like this if you want some more resistances and that faster hit recovery. So the Sorceress has a faster hit recovery of 60, and then I think the next one, if I remember right above that, is 86. Here, let me actually check 1 second. Okay, yeah, so FHR breakpoints on a Sorceress, 42, 60, 86, and you wouldn't really go higher than 86 because there's not one above that. There's not another FHR breakpoint above that until 142. A very easy breakpoint to hit with Spirit is 60 because you can just do what I do, which is just use a Spirit and an FHR Small Charm. Thankfully, I have one that also has Lightning Res. Okay, and I mean, as far as the shield slot is concerned, you really only want to use a Spirit. There's really no other options there. And I should go over the chest plate a little bit more. So there's several things you can do here depending upon how much FCR you need. If I remember right, Viper Magi is the only one that gives 30 FCR. So if you need 30 FCR, you have to use Viper Magi. And Viper Magi is just a really good all-around armor. Okay? If you have it, you can use Ormus Robes. And not that one. Where is it? Okay, I think it actually does this one. Yes. Okay, so an Ormus Robes with 3 to lightning and high lightning skill damage roll and a facet. So, you know, I get a couple thousand more lightning damage out of that. You know, it's a totally viable option. Now, like, you know, what I could do is I could switch out my Chances for Trangs, then I could switch out for Ormus, and then I could switch out an MF ring. Although I'm just going to change these back. I could switch out an MF ring if I do that for a SoJ or wherever I have it. Just a ring like this with 34 MF, or these roll up to 40, by the way. Fortuitous Ring of Fortune goes up to 40, although they're quite rare. Or just a 30 Nagel is a lot easier to come across. Okay? So what you put in your chest slot depends on what's in your other gear. Okay, so I hope that's in-depth enough for you. Charms, since I like to play this on P3, I just have a few lightning scalers. I just use the ones that I happen to have that have some life on them. And then the rest of these are 7 MF charms, except for this hit recovery charm. If you're going for the 60 FHR breakpoint as opposed to the 86, then I highly recommend just using Spirit and a small charm. It's just a really good way of going about it. Technically, you could use a, whatever it's called, a Sandstorm Trek, and then use more, it would be 2 more FHR small charms to try to hit the 86 breakpoint, but I would just go for the 60. I mean, it's not like a terrible idea to try to hit the 86, but in my case at least, I mean, if you have a 50 war traps, a 50 MF war traps, and you'd have to give up 2 7 MF small charms. We're talking about giving up 64 MF. That's a bit of a hit. But you know, I would just go for Spirit and FHR small charm to hit the 60 breakpoint. A few skillers if you have them, like if you have if you have a skiller, a lightning scope with 12 FHR, that's amazing. Use it. I would use that without even thinking, even if you're trying to go for a ton of MF. And the rest just 7 MF small charms, and I happen to have some decent ones that have some resistances, like this one here especially is amazing. So that's the character gear. That was very long-winded, but I wanted to make this in-depth because a Lightning Sorc is a pretty complicated character to gear, essentially. Skills are not very complicated. So your skills, don't put anything in cold, if you want to be really defensive, put a point in frozen armor. You could go for the extra skill points to get a point in shiver armor, but I certainly would not do that. It's not worth it. Unless you're level 99, then maybe go for some shiver armor, and then you'd still probably have a couple extra points to put in warmth. But max lightning, lightning mastery, and all the synergies for lightning. So chain lightning, charge bolt, nova, and then just put 1 point in warmth, and then the rest of your points in warmth is what I would do. Like, if you want to be really defensive, you can put a point in frozen armor, or even get the prereqs and a point in shiver armor, but at least I wouldn't really cast that on what's a pretty fast run anyway. So that's what we're going to do next, is we're going to show off a pit run here, which is what I tend to do on this character. So you can see the amount of life on this character is pretty decent, because I have a Shaco and some life on some of my skillers. And the exterior version of my map, you want to reroll your pit map quite a few times, like on Pit Sorcer. A pit map is very important on Lite Sorc, on Pit Sorcer, just in general. It's reroll your map a lot of times, and my map I like to think is pretty decent. It's a small map. It's kind of what you want to go for. It's a small map, and I just got mana burned. And it has a pretty decent, density of characters, of monsters. And I'm going to skip this, because it's a super lightning immune. And, okay, for a sec I thought his conviction might not have been proccing. Normally, when you see a monster that's lightning after conviction, normally it's an archer, but not always, apparently. So, if you see a monster that it looks like that's lightning immune after conviction, and it looks like it's going to take too long to kill, then just get your Merc to kill it. This is the dangerous part, is when you come into here and you have archers that are amp damaging you. But just when you get archers like that amp damage you, or they have might aura, just either log out or take your time a little bit, because they will kill you if you're not being careful. They are extremely dangerous. So there's a little test run. The only pre-buff, like you saw, I'm using is Bad Orders. Because of the archers. The archers are really the only dangerous thing in here. I mean, like, after I finish the run, by the way, is where I log out after I killed the last monsters. But, yeah, the really only dangerous thing to you in the pits ever on Lite Sorc, pretty much, are the archers. So if you're going to use an armor spell, it's because of the archers. Okay? So, yeah, I mean, that's the full overview. That's my thoughts on gearing a Lite Sorc and playing it. There's really not much in terms to say about the strategy of the actual playing of the build. I mean, obviously, with the way the spell works, you want to line up monsters and just kind of kill as many monsters as you can in one hit. But other than that, there's not really much to say about it. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And stay tuned for more if I have time to record more. I really want to get back into the videos more lately, but I don't know how much time I'll have in the fall. So have a good one, guys.